Well, I'm so glad that we are gathering once again today for our podcast, because today we're going to talk about something that I might argue is the single most important habit that a boss can get into. I alluded in the opening, in the preview, that there is a boss's secret weapon that a lot of leaders aren't using. And we're just going to go right at it. That secret weapon is recurrent one-on-one meetings with direct reports. So whenever I go and do workshops or keynotes and I talk about this, I will ask, how many of you in the room today do recurring one-on-one meetings with your direct reports? And most of the time, it's usually about half of the room or less that raises their hand. And certainly the industry and the workplace environment are going to influence this. You know, if you're working as an electrical contractor and you're building hotels and you're the foreman, you may not be stopping to have these kind of formal sit-down meetings, but that doesn't mean you're not having recurring one-on-one. Sometimes the pulling the people aside and the interactions that you have will accomplish some of the same things that we're going to talk about. But my point is that recurring one-on-one meetings are the way that we create the conditions for people to thrive. So in our earlier episode 2 weeks ago, we talked about the conditions that leaders have to create, where we talked about making people feel like they matter and their professional growth and development and bonding with the team. All of that happens in recurring one-on-one meetings.
That's the place where it shows up.
That's where it shows up. That's the jet that takes you to the destination that you want to get to. If engagement is paradise, and where you're at right now is like Pittsburgh in March, and it's not paradise, no. You got to get on the jet and fly for a while before you can get where you want to be. And the one-on-ones are the jet. They're the vehicle that takes us there. Were you a leader who did recurring one-on-one meetings with your direct reports, Alyssa?
Yes, absolutely. I was. I think back on those times as some of the fondest of my career. I really cherish deeply those opportunities that I had to build relationship with those individuals. You know, it got to be a little bit of a joke in that we they came up with it first. I did not. But one particular team used to they had different bird names for themselves, right? And I was the mama bird. And their bird names all like represented something that they felt they excelled at, or they did, or represented their characteristic of some, in some capacity.
Interesting.
And so to me, that one-on-one is like they're in the nest. Right? In the nest with Mama Bird. Like, that's how we fed each other. That's how we connected, was through that opportunity. That's where people get heard and feel seen, is in those types of connections.
Oh, I'm just madly in love with the analogy of the bird's nest, because when you're in the nest together and Mama Bird is feeding the bird, now the bird can grow and fly and soar because of the time that was spent in the nest. I am hammering and way overdoing this analogy, but you get my point.
We can always count on you to make it a beautiful illustration. I love it. I love it.
Well, but the greater point that you raised too is that this is not necessarily just project update time, right? Recurring one-on-one meetings are about demonstrating that you care about the person. There are conversations about, like we've talked about before, what energizes you about your work. What do you want to get out of your career? What do you need from me that you're not getting? This is time that's devoted to them. And I brought some data with us today, Alyssa, that I thought you might find interesting. A couple of years ago, I came across a study in Training Magazine about one-on-one meetings and motivation. And in the survey that they conducted, they found that 89% of employees want to meet with their boss one-on-one at least once a month or more. And actually 44% of employees want that meeting to be weekly.
Ooh, wow.
So almost
that's
half.
a touch much for me, but okay.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. And I think it's the nature of the work too, because there are some roles that require that kind of constant dialogue with my boss. I need to check in and how do you want me to handle this? And so some of it is project update time. I think that filters into some of the answers on this. But here's an interesting stat. When you survey employees about one-on-one meetings, 69% of employees say they want to set the agenda for those conversations. They want to drive the car. And so I share that with our audience today because I would hope that it should provide some relief. That if you're going to set up recurring one-on-one meetings with your employees, you don't always have to drive the car. You don't have to go in there with an agenda. You don't have to go in there prepared to trigger stimulating conversation for 30 minutes. If you set this up with your employees that this is time devoted to you to talk about anything you want to talk about, it's just also a chance for me to check in with you, find out, you're like, how's it going? What's working for you that you like? And is there anything you need us to take away? It's just all about you. If you do that over and over and over again, and you constantly, I'm going to switch my metaphor or my analogy now from driving the car to riding the horse. If you hand them the reins,
oh, goodness.
They eventually will start taking control of that agenda. When you were doing supervisory recurring one-on-one meetings, Alyssa, how often were you in charge of the agenda, or how often were they driving the conversation?
Yeah, that's a good differential there. You know what? Not nearly as much as I think that it, now looking back, it should have been. It should have been, more their opportunity to lead and show me what they needed, how they wanted to be supported in their role. I think too that it speaks to, oh man, just like the birds, the thought just flew right out of my head. Oh my gosh. Well, that's embarrassing, folks.
Well,
remind me what we were talking about. What did you just say right before? Oh,
do you want an edit?
I got it.
Okay, we're going edit free. Keep it going.
It was holding the silence.
Oh,
that
yes.
I should have employed the tactic that we now know is so critical to the coaching dynamic, to a leadership dynamic, is being able to live in someone else's silence, because that creates space that they need, and they will fill the silence if you are brave enough to allow it. Yeah. Because that's where magic stuff happens.
Absolutely. If you are sitting across from somebody and you say, so what's the most difficult thing you faced in the past week? And that person says, I don't know. I mean, nothing really. That's not an editing issue here, folks. I just stayed silent on purpose. Because if you can sit in that really silence, hard. Right, you signal to that person, like, that's okay, but keep going. And if you've done a little bit of work on the front end to set up what these meetings are for and how you want them to work, you can say, I'm not going to let you off the hook. Like this is time that's devoted to you. And I know it's not always easy to come in here and like unpack stuff with me, but I care enough about you to make sure that you're getting that kind of support, even if there are weeks when you don't feel like you need it. Mm-hmm. So if I ask you a question and you give me a one-word answer, or you don't go very deep, I may just wait for you to keep talking because I want a little bit more from you. And if they understand your intent, if they understand where you're coming from with it, which is out of a place of caring and out of a place of professional respect, and that, as a job, I see my job entirely as being giving you what you need to be successful at yours, then that dynamic works. And not for nothing, but as another quick aside here, if you're going to start doing recurrent one-on-ones, part of the work you have to do at the beginning is to tell everybody that you're going to do recurrent one-on-ones and what they're about. If you just decide to start tomorrow and you pull people in your office and you close the door and everybody's in there for half an hour, you get the like, ooh, what happened?
Yes, right? Who's getting let go? What
Right.
did she say about me?
Right.
Yes.
So that's the setup act, right? Is you pull your team together and you say, listen, I've decided I'm going to start doing something that I think is really important to making sure that I am showing up as the kind of boss that I want to be and creating the kind of environment that allows you all to thrive. We're going to have recurring one-on-one meetings. And these are not, performance management conversations. This is time devoted to you. This is time devoted to you to check in, to talk about what's going on with you, to talk about your career, to talk about your work, to talk about what's energizing you, and to make sure that you're getting from me what you need in this role.
Yeah.
Do you know what the biggest objection is to one-on-one meetings? When I stand in front of other leaders and I say your secret weapon is one-on-one meetings. They are the most powerful tool in your arsenal. If you're not doing them, you should start. Take a guess, Alyssa. What is the number one objection?
I'm too busy. I don't have the time.
I don't have time. And here's the really cool thing. We can prove that that's not true with math.
Math.
With
Who
math.
knew?
Right? Math should have a theme song. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Math. So, and anybody listening to this right now can do a simple equation on the back of an envelope sitting on your desk. If you're driving, please don't write and drive at the same time. If you're running on the treadmill, keep running, but do this later. If you decide that you're going to start by just having a 15-minute one-on-one each quarter, that's an hour a year that you're setting aside for your direct reports for these one-on-one meetings. Yeah. So take the total number of direct reports that you have. Let's say you have 20 direct reports. That means you would spend 20 hours a year in one-on-ones. Sitting down for 15 minutes with each direct report once a quarter will cost you 20 hours a year. Alyssa is a HR professional, like me, a recovering HR professional. And like me, she knows that the number 2080 is what, Alyssa?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I know it had to do with my paycheck, like 40 hours.
Yep, you got it.
26.
It's a year.
Yeah.
It's a year of work. There's 2080s in a 40-hour work week year,
okay.
Right? I'm sorry, I put you on the spot
there. I'm totally
there.
brain dead. I'm proud of myself. I knew that figure resembled something of my past.
You had to reach way back and grab that. It was in there.
It was in there.
Okay. Well, all you have to do, listeners, is take your total number of direct reports and divide it by 2080. And that will tell you what percentage of your time you will spend over the course of a year in one-on-ones. And if you have 20 direct reports and you do a 15-minute one-on-one with your direct reports every quarter, it will cost you 1% of your time in a year. And so the myth of I don't have time, it's just that. It's a myth. The argument of I don't have time is a myth. The return on investment that you get as a leader from those one-on-one conversations is so much greater than the 1% of your time that it will cost you that there is no argument against doing them. They are a secret weapon. And if you aren't doing recurrent one-on-ones, I really hope you will consider starting.